Christmas Eve, 1945, Fayetteville, West Virginia. The Sodder family is fast asleep, dreaming of a quiet holiday. But outside, in the freezing dark, someone is watching. At 1 a.m., the phone rings. A strange woman's voice, a wrong number, or a signal. 30 minutes later, the house is a wall of fire, and 5 children are about to vanish into thin air. To understand what happened that night, you have to understand the man of the house. He was an immigrant who wasn't afraid to speak his mind, especially regarding the political tensions of his home country. In a tight-knit community, this outspoken nature made him stand out. A few months before the events, a stranger arrived at the property looking for work. He walked to the back, pointed at the power boxes, and gave a chilling warning. He claimed the house would face a tragic accident one day. The father was confused. He had just had the equipment checked, and it was in perfect condition. Then came a second warning. Another visitor tried to sell the family a policy. When the father declined, the visitor's mood shifted instantly. He delivered a dark prediction, stating that the home would be lost, and the family would face a terrible cost for the opinions the father had shared so publicly. The clock in the Sodder home struck midnight on Christmas Eve, 1945. Most of the family had drifted off to sleep, but the peace didn't last long. At 1 a.m., the telephone rang. When Jenny Sodder answered, she didn't hear a familiar voice. Instead, a woman's voice she didn't recognize asked for someone Jenny didn't know. In the background, Jenny could hear the clinking of glasses and strange laughter. After hanging up, Jenny noticed something unsettling. The house was too quiet, yet the lights were still on, and the curtains weren't drawn. She headed back to bed, but a sharp thud on the roof made her heart race. She dismissed it as a fallen branch, but 30 minutes later, she woke up to a reality far worse than a strange phone call. The room was filling with smoke. By 1:30 a.m., the house was overwhelmed. Jenny, George, and 4 of the children managed to scramble out, but 5 remained upstairs, trapped as the staircase vanished. George frantically ran for his ladder, the one always kept against the side of the house. It was gone. He then sprinted to his 2 coal trucks, intending to drive them against the wall to climb onto the roof. These trucks had worked perfectly all day, but now, both engines were dead. In a final act of desperation, he tried to intervene with a rain barrel, only to find the water frozen solid. The Sodders could only stand in the snow and watch as their world collapsed. By dawn, the event was over, leaving nothing but a cellar full of debris. But as the sun rose, the mystery only deepened. The responders didn't arrive until 8 a.m., 6.5 hours after the incident started. After a brief sweep of the area, the family was told that no remains were found. Officials claimed the intensity of the event had removed all evidence completely. But George, who had seen many such events in his life, knew that physical fragments almost always survive. He began to wonder if his children had ever been in the house when the nightmare began. The fire was out, but as the smoke cleared, the evidence of a coordinated hit began to surface. It started with the communications. A telephone repairman, called out to investigate why the family couldn't call for help that night, discovered that the lines hadn't been burned through by the heat. They had been cleanly severed with a knife at the top of the pole, a deliberate act of isolation. But the sabotage went deeper than the wires. George's heavy ladder, which was always kept in a specific spot against the side of the house, was nowhere to be found when the stairs vanished. It was later discovered discarded in an embankment over 75 feet away. Someone had physically moved it to ensure no one reached the second floor. Then there were the trucks. George was a man of precision who knew his machinery. Those coal engines had hummed perfectly all day, yet in the moment they were needed to reach the children's windows, they sat dead and cold. To a man like George, 3 accidents in one night didn't equal bad luck. They equaled a trap. But the anomalies didn't stop once the embers cooled. In fact, that's when the Archive X file truly begins. For 4 years, the Sodder family lived over a grave with no bodies. George and Jenny couldn't accept the official ruling of an electrical fire. not when the Christmas tree lights were still glowing as the house began to fall. In 1949, George finally secured a private excavation. He hired Oscar Hunter, a pathologist, to sift through the dirt. What they found should have ended the mystery, but instead, it deepened the conspiracy. Hunter unearthed several human vertebrae. To the local authorities, it was case closed, but the pathology report told a different story. The analysis was conclusive. The remains showed no trace of thermal exposure, no charring, no structural warping from the high temperatures that allegedly overtook 5 children. Even more disturbing, a local cemetery employee eventually broke his silence with a chilling confession. He admitted he had been directed to place those specific remains at the location to convince the family that their search had reached its end. If the evidence was being manufactured by the very individuals tasked with the truth, who was truly orchestrating the narrative that night? To understand the intent, we must look at the months preceding the event. George was a man of technical precision, but he was also a man of vocal convictions, specifically his public opposition to the Italian leadership of the era. In a small community, those words carried weight, and they created friction. In October 1945, a visitor arrived at the Sodder home under the guise of an insurance agent. After George declined his offer, the man's parting words weren't a sales pitch, they were a dark omen. He told George his house would be lost, and his children would be destroyed. Weeks later, a second inspector appeared, focusing specifically on the electrical infrastructure George, a man of technical precision, had personally maintained. He claimed the wiring was faulty. This became the exact justification the fire marshal later cited. Despite a glaring technical anomaly, the power stayed on while the house fell. 2 decades later, a letter arrived with no return address, containing a photograph of a young man who looked exactly like a grown-up Louis Sodder. On the back, a handwritten code. Louis Sodder, I love brother Frankie, Illil Boys, A90132. Jenny Sodder wore black every single day for the rest of her life, a silent, mourning testament to a search that never truly ended. She and George transformed the site into a memorial garden, continuing to dig through the red clay for decades in search of the truth. The billboard they erected on Route 16 stood for years, its weathered surface presenting a haunting question to every passerby. The Sodder case proves that some files aren't closed by time, they are simply buried by it. Case file, Archive X, status, unresolved.